Hebrew, the word soul is neshama. The neshama is the soul. And, the body just houses the soul. That's all it is.
Well,
And, if you do good, it's assumed that you would go to heaven. And if you're an evil person, well, we know where you're going to wind up. But there are some religions, like Calvinism, who believe in predestination, where from the time you are conceived, it's already been determined whether your soul goes to heaven and you're a good person or an evil person. And you say, the big question would be, well, how do you really know? You're talking about an unborn child. And the Calvinist preachers would say, well, if the child is good growing up, he's going to go to heaven. You hear about people saying that, oh, that person was born evil. Well, really nobody is born evil. We're all born innocent.
we think.
Well, I know that in the Catholic religion, and Anne will certainly bear me out on this, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden were innocent until they ate, I hate to call it an apple because it was probably a pomegranate, but they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and God cursed them, basically. Women will suffer in childbirth and have pain, and man will have to work in the fields to provide for his family. These are things that they never had to do before. And it wasn't until the birth of Jesus and his crucifixion on the cross when men's sins were washed clean and all those people who died were now allowed to leave purgatory and enter heaven. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Well, I think everybody has, if you want to call it, some people may not call it a soul. If you're an atheist, you still have a soul. If you didn't, then all atheists would be possibly bad people, or...
Well, I don't know. Then I think of...
good people,
Who is it?
There are probably just as many good atheists as there are bad atheists, just like there's many good Catholics as bad Catholics.
The T.S. Eliot, in his poem The Hollow Men, at the end, and I've said this before on the show, the poem ends, "This is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends," not with a bang, but a whimper. For those who have religion and know that they are saved, they know that when they die, they will be going up to heaven. Their soul will be saved. Okay? And if you have no religion at all, like basically my friend in Florida who claims that, for all he knows, it could be a fairy tale. He just doesn't believe.
Well, listen, I'm still waiting for somebody to come back and tell me about it.
Well, George Burns used to say that all the time about Gracie. He would say he would go to the cemetery and talk to her, and this is the only time that he never gets an answer. She doesn't answer him back. And everybody's still waiting for Houdini to come back. Certainly, if anybody's going to come back, it's going to be Harry Houdini, who, by the way, happened to be Jewish.
Well, but
I guess if we could take it to a next level, right? And that is that every living organism on Earth is supposed to be a child of God, right? So from the fish in the oceans to the animals on the planet, they're all supposedly children of God, right? So if we think about it that way, that means that our animals, my beloved dogs, all have souls. And if that's the case...
I think what differentiates man from the animal kingdom, even though man is part of the animal kingdom, is that man does have a soul. Now, people will argue, I can tell that you would too, being a pet lover, that we would like to think that our pets... if anybody should be in heaven, it should be our pets, because all they've ever done is bring us pleasure. You know,
That's,
they really do.
That's exactly where I was going. You know, if that's the case, then they exist on this earth for a certain amount of time to show unconditional love and appease us, and when they pass on, then what happens to them? They just go in the earth and that's it?
You know,
or is there really a doggy heaven or a cat heaven? And if that's the case, then you take to the next level.
Well, if that's the case,
Charlie,
then that's where I want to go.
You want to go to doggy heaven?
Oh, yeah. I wish I could be surrounded by the dogs that I've had in my life.
Well, there should be only one heaven. Everybody goes up there.
Well, I
together,
agree.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I've said this before on this show, when I used to go visit my dad upstate, when he was living near my sister and then he was in a nursing home, I'd be gone for 2 or 3 days, and when I come home, the only one who was happy to see me was the dog. The dog would run up to the door, and his tail would be wagging, and he'd be so happy. My wife would look down from the top of the stairs. Kids would look and say, "Oh,
it's
okay,
only you.
You're home. Yeah, big deal." And it's true. You know, no matter how, and right now, unfortunately, you know, our Westie, who is 15 and a half, as I said, has an inoperable tumor, okay, and he's really slowing down. I mean, he sleeps most of the day. At night, he usually has accidents that I clean up after. And, you know, my wife, who is a dog lover and a pet lover, you know, she says, "How long are you going to keep this up?" You know, and I said, "Well, he's not ready yet." She would say to me, "Why? Do you have a discussion with him about it?" You know? And I said, "Look, you know, he eats his food, he goes out, and he usually barks. He goes to the back room and he barks by the door, so I know he wants to go out. You know, but sometimes he doesn't. I mean, and then who catches flack for that? I do. You know, because my wife will come down the stairs and say, "Why does it smell like the dog made?" And I said, "Well, Ellen, I'm cleaning it up. I'm in the process." And she would say, and then I would say, "Well, you know, I got up and I was going to let him out, but he just squatted and did his business." And she said, "And you watched him?" I said, "What do you expect me to do? Pick him up while it's coming out and throw him out the door?" You know, it doesn't work that way. You know,
she expects you to put your hands underneath this so it doesn't go on the floor.
Please. Yeah, she probably would want me to. You know. But it's taking care of a sick pet is like taking care of a sick loved one. You know, I mean, the only difference is that the pet really can't tell you, you know, in words. You have to be able to read it on his or her face, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's it. You know, Ellen and I are at the stage right now. We're both 66, and we say to ourselves, as much as we want another dog, and, you know, this time we'd get another Weimaraner because she was such a sweet dog, you know, the best we could hope for is 10 years, 10 to 12 years with her. Okay, but by then we'll be pushing 80. Will we really have the ability to take care of a dog that age? Or will the dog have to take care of us? You know?
Yep.
I don't know.
But
I mean, in a sense they do, because, you know, you see all these dogs that have all these skills that, you know, sense cancer and sense, you know, working dogs, whatever, and then on the other hand, you have these dogs that were violently abused, treated like garbage, and, you know, they get rescued, and they are the most loving, most forgiving animals you could ever imagine. So you got to wonder, do they have a soul? They must.
You know, I ask myself, how can people be so cruel to treat a pet like that? But look at how people treat other people. You know, I mean, you know, if you live near a big city, all right, and you happen to work in the big city, you know, there are many homeless people, many people sleeping in cardboard boxes or on the sidewalk or on a park bench. And we as people look at them and just keep walking like they don't exist. We've become so cold and callous that it doesn't do anything for us. Yet, if we see a dog limping on 3 legs and the other paw is, looks like it's broken, we feel terrible about the pet. Now, I could understand that, but why is it that we turn, our heads the other way when we see people who probably just need, I don't know, a good meal?
Yeah, no, I get it.
A shower, some clean clothes.
And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's all kinds of videos now, especially on the internet, that their animals take care of animals. And
yes,
it's amazing. It's simply amazing. And what's really amazing is that you'll see dogs take care of cats, and cats take care of dogs, and dogs take care of deer, and arch enemies, arch nemesis will take care of each other in time of need. So you just can't help but wonder.
You ever see how an elephant mourns when one of their own dies?
Oh yeah.
Yep. I mean, I see it with my guys. We have our one guy who's older now, and he has really bad days. And when he has a really bad day, the other one, especially the puppy, she's right by him, coddling him, and staying by him, and keeping him company. And so you just, I don't know, you can't help but wonder.
They have this sixth sense.
I can't imagine that if God exists, that He would put these wonderful, loving creatures on this earth and not want them to have to go to heaven and have an extended life.
Well,
I agree.
Which would indicate they have a soul.
You would think so, right? But anyway.
Well, if you ask St. Francis would say, even the smallest of insects has a soul.
I told Mark the other day, I saw a show. It was a survivalist show, and the guy was stranded and he was really hungry. And he caught a fish. And he killed it. Then he said a prayer over the fish, thanked him for saving his life, and and he blessed his soul to go somewhere better. Which I found quite interesting.
Well, I wonder if what is it? You see, this is where my temporal lobe and frontal lobe damage really upsets me. There was a book written about a plane crash with the one with the kids, and they set up. And this is from an English teacher, which really is upsetting that I can't remember this stuff. I was telling my friend down in Florida, I find that it's very upsetting to me that I can't remember. The kid's name was Piggy, and then they had other kids, and they set up a society, and they eventually turned to cannibalism, or if not that, then think about the movie Alive, where the plane crashed in the Andes, and rather than bury the dead bodies, they cannibalized and ate the dead bodies in order to survive, because that was their only way of survival. Now, when you and I hear it, it sounds disgusting and gross. Many primitive natives from different tribes across South America and Africa, were cannibals, okay? And to them it was nothing. It was just one way of staying alive.
And so that basically does not separate us very far from the animal kingdom, does it?
No.
Well, actually, I think